The following words of service and sacrifice of the chaplains in the Second World War are entirely in his own words and were written at the end of the war in October 1945. The United States fleet is homeward bound these days, and yesterday Americans paused to celebrate Navy Day. The men and women of the naval services are profoundly grateful for this tribute and happy that America is saying, "Well done." On ships of the line and most flotillas and with squadrons of smaller ships, there is a man who has sought out his enemy in unique ways. He has not borne arms, but he has been in battle. He was at Pearl Harbor, Guadalcanal, the Coral Sea, Saipan, Iwo Jima, the Philippines, Okinawa, and Tokyo Bay. His battle station was his pulpit, in a crude chapel or in the crowded compartment of a ship, in his little office where he shared the simple joys of the men, counseled them in their trouble, or in the sick bay where he comforted them in their pain. He wears the Christian cross or the Jewish tablet and Star of David. Once he decided Navy men needed him, he volunteered for the United States Naval Chaplains Corps. On September 8, 1939, when Franklin D. Roosevelt declared this nation to be in a state of emergency, there were 91 Navy chaplains in uniform, with 63 others standing by in the Naval Reserve. By August 1, 1943, over 1,300 clergymen had taken leave of their civilian parishes, had gone to the Navy Procurement Office to offer their services to the chaplaincy. By August 15, 1945, there were 2,811 Navy chaplains, or 1 to approximately 1,250 men. By that time, 12 chaplains had given their lives aboard fighting ships or on bloody invasion beaches. Five had been taken prisoner by the Japanese. "83 had been decorated for outstanding and heroic conduct, or for wounds received in action. The Navy trained its new chaplains with a 2-month indoctrination course. The Naval Training School was first set up at the Naval Operating Base, Norfolk, Virginia, and was later moved to College of William and Mary at Williamsburg. Student chaplains who were commissioned lieutenants and lieutenants junior grade learned Navy regulations and procedure, customs, etiquette, history, counseling, warfare duties, and first aid. They went aboard ships and to shore stations for periods of field training. Young candidates for the ministry were inducted into the Navy V-12 program. They continued their seminary training in uniform, and upon graduation were commissioned into the Chaplain Corps. The chaplains were assigned to the Navy ships and stations, to the Marines, and to the Coast Guard. They were with personnel of these services while they trained and went with them into battle. The ugly backdrops of war were difficult settings for the sacred ideals of religion, but the chaplains brought religion to fighting men and tried to keep them reminded of the truths of divinity, helped them to find spiritual strength when physical endurance was nearly gone, and urged them to remember their Creator, whom some of them faced for the first time as they faced death. "I am most humble when I consider the great personal responsibility that is mine," said one Navy chaplain, "a responsibility that is every chaplain to preserve in these young people a supreme faith in their religious convictions, to help them find clear-cut and spiritually satisfying answers to disturbing questions which may crowd or jumble their thinking during these troubled times. With these men far away from home, chaplains put aside differences of faith and turned their thoughts and efforts and abilities toward one goal, the spiritual care of these young Americans. Army and Navy chaplains worked long hours together, planning their programs so that every man in their areas would have opportunity to worship according to his own faith, unchanged pulpits, and traveled from unit to unit bringing divine services to men stationed in isolated places. They gave instruction and equipment to units and ships without chaplains so that laymen could lead services for their comrades. And chaplains found things to do besides holding divine services each Sunday. During the battle, for instance, they served as valuable assistants to doctors and medical parties, offering a glass of cool water or a prayer, bringing men through fire and strafing to the aid stations where doctors could take over. A Blue Jacket wrote, "If you have ever seen a chaplain trying to comfort men who have had their eyes burned out or whose skin is hanging in shreds, you understand that it is not an easy task. When the excitement of battle is over and the morphine wears off, the pain comes back again to the wounded. Then the chaplain lives with the men, bathing them, helping to feed them, always ready, because a man may die at any time. I have never figured out just when our chaplain slept. Maybe he didn't. But I remember him because he was weeping for the wounded. Several of the fellows remarked that it seemed strange for a man to cry after all the danger was over. But when we saw our chaplain in the sick bay, caring for the broken bodies of the men he loved, I think a lot of us realized for the first time what it meant to be wholly consecrated to God's work. With the Marines, or Naval Construction Battalions on advanced bases, chaplains found their first job was to find places of worship for their men. Natives, grateful that Christianity was once again in their midst, turned out to construct chapels of nipa grass, palm fronds, and native lumber. With the coming of the Navy chaplains, these dark-skinned Christians were able to worship their God for the first time since the Japanese had occupied their homes many years before. When the Navy went into the Mediterranean, the countries of the Middle East were impoverished and war-stricken. Their people were starving and in need of clothing. Many of them were homeless. Navy chaplains organized help for them, gave parties for their children at Christmas time, played Santa Claus with gifts of clothes and good things to eat. Native children of the Pacific Islands, Chinese youngsters, and even a little group of children of Japanese prisoners were also Navy guests at Christmas time. On holidays, chaplains planned happy hours and sing-songs for the men. If they were in port, sightseeing parties were organized, athletic contests were held. 2 chaplains in the 3rd Marine Division helped sponsor a tropical Olympics and decided to participate themselves. One chaplain walked off with the broad jump honors. The other outdistanced the field in the 800-yard dash. Said one leatherneck, "Sinners don't have a chance in this outfit. If the Padre can't reach 'em with the sermons, he can run 'em down." Bible classes were guided by the chaplains, were an important part of life aboard many ships and in many units. Young men whose training for the ministry had been interrupted by war continued their studies under the tutelage of their chaplains. Now that victory is here, chaplains have found that in many ways their responsibilities have increased. Men anxious to get home to their loved ones are taking their problems to the chaplain who is playing an active role in the Navy's Civil Readjustment Program. The chaplain remembers the faces of his fighting men congregations recalls the grip of their hands as they filed out of his makeshift chapel. His prayer now is that these men whom he has seen through the most trying times of their lives will not fail as they make the transition back to civil life. When demobilization is completed, the Navy hopes to have a corps of some 500 chaplains on active duty. The challenge of their Navy ministry will have in no way diminished in peacetime. The powers of darkness, which were our chaplains' enemies during the war, have not agreed to any surrender terms. They were not among those present when the documents which brought military peace were signed. Chaplain Thomas was born in 1892 and was from Piney Woods, Mississippi. He was one-fourth Choctaw Indian. He got his preacher's license when he was only 16. His father said he couldn't smoke cigarettes, so he became a lifelong Tampa cigar smoker. He graduated from Millsaps College and Seashore Divinity School. Helen Fondren said she would never marry a preacher, but that was until she met Will Thomas. They traveled a circuit with horse and buggy and motorcycle between churches in Mississippi. Wanting to join the First World War effort, the Army had no need for chaplains. So he enlisted in the Navy, never having seen a naval officer. As a Navy chaplain, he made 28 trips with troops across the Atlantic in 1918 and 1919, serving on board the USS Madagascar. 2 million American soldiers were transported to the European theater. He then served on board the USS Pennsylvania from 1923 and 1924. In 1928 and 1929, he was chaplain aboard the USS Riley for a State Department goodwill tour to Europe and the Middle East. He then served on the USS West Virginia, 1932 and 1933. He had a tour of duty at the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis from 1924 until 1927 as an assistant chaplain and returned as command chaplain from 1933 till 1945. He wrote the Midshipman's Prayer in 1938. He oversaw the expansion of the Naval Academy Chapel, dedicating it in 1940. He was instrumental in bringing the Jewish clergy to the Academy, and he was Chief of Chaplains from 1945 until 1949. He decommissioned 2,600 chaplains at the end of the Second World War. He then went on to greatly revise the chaplain corps. He was promoted to Rear Admiral, upper half, permanent status. He was awarded the Legion of Merit. He wrote the stirring words in Memorial Hall at the U.S. Naval Academy. The walk encircling the Academy Chapel is named in his honor. He was awarded an honorary Doctorate of Divinity degree from American University. He retired after 33 years of service in 1949.